Good afternoon. Welcome back to Power Summit 2020, our first virtual Power Summit. Thanks to everybody who's been with us for the last 2 hours. We had some really incredible breakout sessions. We already heard from Latina activists from around the country, Senator Bernie Sanders, our board member Rosario Dawson, and Maria Teresa Kumar. And coming up, we've got a great conversation with Secretary Julian Castro, a greeting from Vice President Biden. And before we get to our next conversation, I want to introduce this video by Diana Diaz. It's a terrific reminder of our own power and what we can all do together to make a difference.
Voting for me is a very important tool that we can use to exercise our right to vocalize and change policy in our government that we aren't satisfied with. It's a great way, the power behind your vote is a wonderful way to vocalize things that you are not satisfied with. I think especially given the time right now where a lot of marginalized communities are affected by laws, it's a beautiful time for us to be vocal. I know personally for me, I am a big advocate when it comes to garment workers. As a designer, I really care about where my clothing is being made and who's making it. And so I feel like I have a lot of power as far as saying, you know, what laws should be in place to protect garment workers and to be a big voice and advocate for that specific sector. I think for a lot of people in marginalized communities, people of color, people that don't come from a lot of money, they feel really disempowered when it comes to voting. I think a lot of people feel like nothing's going to change. There's no point in voting. But I think, you know, we are at a time where we can no longer think that way. I think we are under a very dangerous administration where we need to really exercise our power to vote. Like, we need to change who is in office. And one of the only ways to do that is by voting. We do have power to vote. I think voting is a wonderful way that we can change the way that our government is running and where it's heading. Find anyone that will vote for anyone's interest other than themselves. I think you need to vote for things that matter to you. If, you know, for example, like in my case, the garment industry is something that's important to me, and a lot of the people that work there are undocumented immigrants. You know, they're women, they're people from Latin America, from Asia, and, you know, they don't really have much power in this country. So it's up to me to be a voice for them, right? To be vocal and to stand up for their rights. And that's the power that I'm aware that I have, and that's the power that I'm more than happy to exercise. And I can do that by voting, and I can do that by being very vocal about what I think is wrong in the system and when it's to change. So I think it really is up to the individual to be very conscious about the things they do not like, and it's up to them to educate themselves about it and to exercise their right to vote so that they can change what they don't like.
Hello, everyone. Secretary Castro, it's always such a pleasure to be chatting with you. You joined Voto Latino this year as a special guest advisor and have previously been with us as a board member. You have been instrumental in shaping the work of Voto Latino, and you're a fan favorite at our Power Summits. I'm sad that we're not able to see each other in person, but it's so great to see you live and in good lighting. Let me start off by asking how you're doing. And if you could tell the audience what you've been up to since your presidential campaign, hopefully a little bit more sleep, I imagine.
Yeah, well, Rosario, it's great to be with you. Thank you for everything that you've done for Voto Latino and all of your activism over the years, using your platform and your voice to make a difference. And I want to give a shout out to everybody attending the Power Summit. I wish we could be doing it in person, especially because it's always just up the road in Austin. It's wonderful to see everybody out there, hopefully next year. Since the campaign ended for me earlier this year, I've been doing everything that I can to try and get great candidates elected throughout the country. Of course, with just a month left until the election, it's crunch time. And so I'm probably like on 3 or 4 Zooms a day, a lot of them for candidates. And then also I'm playing stay-at-home dad, managing my kids' virtual learning. In fact, I'm using the computer right now that my son Christian usually uses during the day for his classes. He finished them up today, so I'm able to use it. But yeah, we have an 11-year-old and then a 5-year-old, and our 11-year-old can kind of manage things on her own, but the 5-year-old needs a little hand-holding, and that's what I'm doing.
Man, I mean, too, there's so much screen time is such a new thing. I mean, we're not getting that 3-dimensional learning as much, unless we're having parents who are going to be more active with us. So I'm hoping for a lot of stay-at-home parents, as much as their kids are sitting in front of the screen so much, that they're also getting that one-on-one time with their parents, which is a good silver lining, I imagine. I want to actually segue a little bit, because the health and wealth, obviously, of the Latinx community is dependent on voting and voter turnout. So there is a little more than a month left before Election Day. And although this year it's more of an election season, I like to say fall voting season 2020. What are you going to wear to the polls or while you fill out your ballot at home? But what can the people watching do to educate, engage, and empower as many of their friends, family, and community members as possible at this time?
Yeah, it's a great question. All of us have family members and friends, neighbors that may not vote regularly or at all. And so, there are different resources. Obviously, Voto Latino is one of those, but there's also iwillvote.com with helpful information. People can look up, the rules for their state and when the deadlines are to get registered if you're not registered, and then how to actually go and exercise your right to vote. The number one thing that people can do is to have a plan to go vote. Right? We're in the middle of this pandemic. A lot of people are maybe worried about how they can go vote and not risk their health. You want to have a plan to vote. If you're going to vote early in person, where you're going to go and do that, or by mail, right? When you have to request a ballot and when you have to send it in by. And so going to iwillvote.com is a good way to get organized about that. And then just be, I hope, the loudest advocate for people actually voting that you can be on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on any way that you can, and talking to your friends and family to let them know why it's good for them to go vote and what the stakes are. Whatever you're passionate about, healthcare or immigration or raising minimum wage or any number of things, just, that passion rubs off on people.
I love that you said that, because by doing that, you're pushing back against a lot of the disinformation people are going to be getting online.
Yeah.
And, getting, people really trust it when they hear it from people that they know and love. So getting good facts to people at this time is critical when they're being bombarded with disinformation. And I also love that you said, talking about making a plan to vote. I'm hoping people will be model voters, and that means making it being a part of your identity. And if we don't make a plan, we don't do pretty much anything. I mean, you read any kind of habit book and it talks about, like, you don't just say, I want to get better at this, or I'd like to do this more, unless you actually physicalize making a plan. When you, not even to go on the negative, when you do physically make a plan for something, their chances of actually executing on that and getting your goals met go up hugely. So definitely that's huge advice. Now, On a scarier note, actually, we've seen active voter registration efforts, voter suppression efforts, excuse me, across the country. It's like besides the gerrymandering and the redistricting and the redlining and all of that stuff, including yesterday, right now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott declared that each county could only have one ballot drop-off location. Severely limiting voting accessibility in a very crucial state, because we know that Texas is very much in play in this election. So how do you believe we can best combat voter suppression campaigns and ensure a free and fair election?
I think there are two keys here. One of them is the legal route. That decision by Governor Abbott, as well as a number of decisions by other state elections officials and governors that are trying to suppress a vote, they're being challenged in court, as they should be. And the good news is that in a number of these instances across the country, they have been blocked from being able to suppress the vote in the way that they're trying to. That's not always the case. In some of those instances, they've been successful at doing it. You know, we think about how many hundreds of thousands of people were thrown off the rolls in Georgia. And as many people have said, Stacey Abrams would likely be governor in Georgia if it weren't for that. But here in Texas, the legal route, and then secondly, it goes back to education. Right? It goes back to talking to folks about what they can do. First, educating yourself, and then talking to folks about what they need to do to be able to go out and make sure that their ballot is cast and that it counts. And that includes verifying, for instance, that you are on the voter roll, because people have been thrown off the voter rolls. If you're able to do that in your county, do that with your county elections clerk. You know, make sure that your friends and family and neighbors know where they're supposed to go vote and that they're on the rolls, and also know your rights. Know that, for instance, if they don't have you on the voter roll, that oftentimes, I know here in my state of Texas, that you can file a piece of paper, an affidavit that says you are a registered voter, and you can cast a provisional ballot. And when they verify that, yes, indeed, they made a mistake and you should be there on the roll, your ballot counts. So educate yourself.
So we're talking a lot about GOTV getting out the vote, but what is the best advice that you can tell what people should be focusing on after the election, post-election, no matter which way things go? What should people be gearing up for to do?
To me, the election is not an ending, it's a beginning. If we say that we want every single person in this country to have health care, that we want to raise the minimum wage, that we want to stop separating families at the border and fundamentally reimagine policing in our country, then the push just starts right after the election, no matter who's elected. The push to actually get these things done begins when people actually get into office in January with a new Congress and a new president and vice president, I think. And I think we learned this during the Obama administration. You know, the Obama administration accomplished so many great things, right? But President Obama himself told activists at one time that you got to push, right? You got to make things happen. You got to make people in politics, and I say this as somebody who has been in politics, you got to make folks uncomfortable, right? Sometimes, but keep pushing for those issues that you're passionate about, whatever they are, because the election is not when the real work stops, it's when the real work starts.
You are one of the few Latino presidential candidates ever. And that's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. And I can say you did, I'm sure your family proud, but you did my family proud. And I just want to say thank you so much.
Well, that means a lot, Rosario, because I know that you have a high standard. So it means
I do. We have a lot of viewers who are from Texas. I used to live in Garland, Texas myself. And you know, they all have a very similar background as you. So, you know, do you have any advice for any of them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hope that a lot of y'all that are watching out there, that you go into public service.
Doing that, y'all, I saw that.
I hope that y'all go into public service. We need, you know, smart, talented young people with a lot of integrity, with high ideals and great aspirations for their community and for our country. Don't wait your turn. Go for it. If you have a passion for it, go for it. And the other thing is, even if you're not going to go into public service, and most people won't, right? Find a way to contribute, whatever that is, through nonprofit volunteer work, in your business, your charitable contributions, your neighborhood association, your church, whatever way it is, find a way to do something for other people in your life in a significant way. And the final thing I would just say, especially because I know that we're talking to a lot of young folks out there, is to always believe in yourself and to surround yourself with people who believe in you and who love you and want the best for you. Because oftentimes in life we walk through periods where, we're not 100% confident about whether we belong there or we can accomplish something, or maybe, we're the first in our family to go to college or to become a professional or whatever it is. Believe in yourself and know that you're there for a reason. If you're there because you did that. And surround yourself with people who also are looking out for you.
As much as I'm sad that I'm not able to be with you in person and your family who's always come through so much for us, I'm really, really grateful that you're getting this time with your family so much one-on-one now. Being that they made the big sacrifice of having you be out on the road so often while you were running and championing so many important issues and educating so many people to be ready and prepared for this moment. So just thank you so much for your time, Secretary Castro. We're always grateful for your work and for your perseverance in defending and representing our community so beautifully.
Gracias. Thank you so much, Rosario.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Cuídate. All right, we're now going to be transitioning to a conversation with Alexis McGill Johnson from Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Cecile Richards of Supermajority. Enjoy. I'm excited.
Our next guests are champions for the rights of women, and I'm happy to call them not just my friends, but fellow guerreras, women warriors. Please welcome Cecile Richards, co-founder of Supermajority, former president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, New York Times bestselling author of Make Trouble, and lifelong organizer for women's rights and economic justice. And joining me also is Alexis McGill Johnson, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, a renowned social and racial justice leader, lifelong political and cultural organizer, and a tireless advocate for reproductive rights and access to quality, affordable healthcare. Voto Latino was the first Latinx advocacy organization to adopt reproductive justice and women's healthcare rights from the very beginning of our launch. You all have done incredible work in this space, and our audience today would love to hear more about the work that you're doing. And full disclosure to our audience, I had the privilege of serving on the Planned Parenthood board when both Alexis McGill Johnson was the chair and Cecile was the helm of the organization and completely transformed what it meant to talk about reproductive rights. I feel privileged to have this conversation with you both today. And Cecile, I want to start with you because I know that you've been working tirelessly on Supermajority to talk a little bit about what it is and why should we be engaging young women at this moment in time.
Well, thank you, Maria Teresa. And it's so awesome to get to be here with you. Who I know we've been in the work together for a long, long time. And Alexis, who is just such an incredible leader now for Planned Parenthood and the broader reproductive justice movement. And this is at a very important moment, right? When really women and women of color in the lead, as always, Latinx women, African-American women, are the most important voters in this country. And that's a story that I feel like we've all known for a long time, but finally it's being discussed out in the world, partly because, of course, more and more women and women of color are running for office and getting elected. And the work that Voto Latino is doing, along with Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Supermajority, I think is really key to making sure that every woman in this country is registered, that she is able to find out where she can vote, how she can vote safely, and that her vote is counted. Because women will be the majority of voters in November. We almost always are, I think since the 1960s. And this year in particular at Supermajority, we're focused on young women, many of whom who have never had the chance to vote for before, and this is their first election. And certainly women of color who, as you say, are really dominated the primaries and will dominate in November.
Yeah, and so I want to follow up on that, Alexis, because right now we just heard that the president and Melania Trump came down with COVID. We know that over 7 million Americans have COVID, and this really means that coming out of this virus, we're going to have 7 million more Americans with pre-existing conditions. When we talk about who's at the forefront, a lot of sadly of these, disproportionate impacted by the coronavirus, we know that it is Latinx women and it is Black women. Can you talk a little bit about these health disparities and what is on the ballot in November?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. And look, first of all, I just have to say, it's just good to see both of your faces and know that we continue to do this really important work together. And at such a time when all of these things are coming together, like literally we are in the middle of a pandemic. We have, as you said, 7 million people who have tested positive for coronavirus, over 200,000 who have died. We have, we are in the middle of a racial reckoning, right? Where there has been, untold lost lives and protests related to, ensuring that people of color can just travel safely and be without fear of death at the hands of police. We just had a situation in Georgia at the ICE detention center where where literally people's uteruses were being taken away from them, forced hysterectomies, and a long, dark history of forced reproduction and control of our bodies, particularly of people of color. And we are in the middle of a climate crisis, an economic crisis. And I think we are in this moment where just the intersection of all of these issues are really demonstrating why this election is more critical than ever. The ACA is essentially on the ballot this November. We have a court hearing, a Supreme Court hearing that could strike down the Affordable Care Act. Over almost 30 million people could lose access to health insurance because the Senate, instead of focusing on something like COVID relief or focusing on COVID testing, comprehensive COVID testing to really understand this pandemic, they are instead trying to rush through a nomination of confirmation of Judge Barrett. And so while reproductive rights are also on the line, there are also 17 cases that are a step away from the Supreme Court related to access to abortion. I do think that healthcare in this COVID moment is really the thing that is most immediate that we all need to be really concerned about.
And on that, Cecile, when you've been traveling around the country with Supermajority, what are you hearing from people on the ground? What are the conversations that you're doing? I know that you're mobilizing women around even via Zoom. Your work hasn't stopped. What are you hearing? What are their concerns?
It's very consistent, and really with the issues that Alexis raises. We did a massive survey, particularly talking to women of color, listening to young women. They have four real issues. One is they are deeply concerned about racial injustice in this country, and to use Alexis's phrase, that the need for a racial reckoning. And this is something that is really transcending race. It's just, as I think we're seeing in the manifestations across the country, this is now touching everyone, and long overdue. Number two, absolutely this concern about healthcare. And to Alexis's point, I think that it's really important that folks who are watching this understand one of the reasons that President Trump and Mitch McConnell are trying to jam through in the most irresponsible way a ninth justice on the Supreme Court is because 5 days after the election, the case that this administration is pushing, along with Republican attorney generals across the country, would actually overturn the Affordable Care Act. And to the point Alexis made, not only risk the health insurance coverage for nearly 30 million people, but everything we fought for together, the three of us and many, many others, the fact that women don't have to pay more for health insurance, finally, that the gender rating was made illegal under the Affordable Care Act, the fact that we can now get our family planning and our other preventive benefits at no copay, and most importantly, probably for people that are in this moment, that if you have a pre-existing conditions, you can't be denied healthcare coverage. This administration is ready to throw that out. And we know that there are now millions of people, not only that have pre-existing conditions, but many of them because they had COVID. Economic injustice and the fact that we, women and women of color in particular, still paid less than men doing the exact same work. And the last thing is that women want to make sure that they can vote and that they can vote safely. And one little sort of plug I'd like to put in, because it is something we've been doing at Supermajority, is, we've launched a site, which I'd love to put up in the chat or send somewhere, is any woman can find out if they're registered, they can find out where their voting spots are, what the new rules are in voting, and they can even look at their ballot before they go in. Because, of course, voter intimidation, unfortunately, I know it's an issue you've been working on, Maria Teresa, for so long. This is now the only way that this, I think what we're seeing is that many people are now trying to suppress the vote, including my home state of Texas. And that's a real concern for women.
And I think, Alexa, something that Cecile brought up is sometimes the mechanics, right? What we're hearing sometimes we're seeing for the first time is that the people that are registered are enthusiastic to go vote, but there's a lot of people still kind of sitting on the fence. And we know that the deadlines are coming up for many folks on Monday, October 5th. What do you tell a young woman sitting on that fence?
Oh, I mean, it is more urgent now. Like a decade ago, I think right when I met you, Maria Teresa, I was running a campaign called Vote or Die. And I feel like the urgency, the number of calls that I've gotten from people about how we need to resurrect the language around that campaign is just never been more clear. It is, everything is on the line, like our very existence is on the line. And I think that, I've really had to tell them they don't have a choice in this moment, that it is actually not a legitimate choice to stay home in this election. It is really important for us to align and make sure that we are demonstrating and using our voice around any number of issues related to, to our reproductive rights, to our ability, again, just to walk and live free. And so, it is nice that when you look at the polls that the undecideds are definitely decreasing, but it is really important to make sure that everyone is going out to ensure that they are voting. There's just really no other choice.
Well, and I think, Cecile, that's a strategy, right? This idea of suppressing the vote of someone because they know that when we come out in force, I mean, people say, "What? My vote doesn't matter." I remind them that in 2018, Generation X, Y, and Z outvoted, and we actually have a House of Representatives that looks like us. And thank God, Speaker Pelosi is once again, the speaker. But can you talk about, I'm going to actually flip a little bit, because I know you're from Texas. You mentioned Texas. Can you talk a little bit about the state of Texas? Because as I shared with you, as of this morning, we've registered 211,000 new registrants in Texas. And we deeply believe that it's closer than people realize, because there's so many young people that are eligible, but maybe sitting down on the fence. And to Alexa's point, that there's no choice. Can you talk about what you think Texas looks like?
Well, it's funny. I was just on a call last night for someone who's running for Congress in Texas, a woman, and the night before, a different woman who's running for Congress. I feel like I've spent so much of my last few weeks on Zoom calls with people in Texas, where there were this extraordinary group of women and women of color that are running for everything from the state house to Congress. As you know, in 2018, we elected the first two Latinas in the history of the state, Veronica Escobar and Sylvia Garcia, to the House of Representatives. And in Harris County, the third largest county in the country, elected 28-year-old Lina Hidalgo to be the county judge. No one had seen this. No one expected this. And she is tremendous. And that, I think, is what we're seeing in Texas, is not only that, and the registration that you're doing is so critically important, because there's a whole new group of young people in Texas coming of age to vote, many of them Latinx. But what we're also seeing is that women not waiting, as we say, start before you're ready. These are young women who are just running for office, women who, Candace Valenzuela, who just won her primary. Again, probably 4-8 years ago, no one would have ever imagined would be running for Congress. And now she's poised to go to Washington, D.C. It is a new world. I think it's important to remember, though, it is not something that just happened overnight. It has happened because groups like Voto Latino, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, invested in leadership. They invested in voter registration. They invested in organizing, and all that investment is now bearing fruit. And we're poised. Actually, interesting. I think there could be, depending on what happens in November, but it's very possible that the Democratic congressional delegation from Texas would be 50% women.
That's huge. And that has everything to do with the work that I know that you have laid the foundation for at Planned Parenthood, Alexis and Cecile. And I have to say, Cecile, I completely agree. We've been able to register all those folks, but it's because those folks are hungry for participation. And there's great organizations building the bench of great leadership. I am such a fangirl of Lina Hidalgo and how she's been able to take Governor Abbott to task for mismanagement of the coronavirus. I want to ask both of you really about what's your advice for young women right now to get involved? Cecile, I would love for you to talk a little bit about the effort that we're joining you in doing on October 17th, but really use this as an opportunity. Like we're almost 32 days out as of today for the most consequential election of our lifetime. What can young people do right now?
Well, two things. One, I just want to make sure that we point out that based on the registration, based on the change in population, that Latinx voters will be the largest minority population this year, and first time in history. So I think what's really important for young people to understand, young women, is that they have power to not just change what happens in November, but to change what happens in this next century. Mm-hmm. So owning that power, kind of the point you and Alexis were talking about, like, how do you encourage people to vote? Is to say, because actually you make a huge difference. And the second thing is, on October 17th, I think we're all trying to join together to have women vote that day. 37 states that day will have early in-person voting. And that's a day where people can begin to put your own oxygen mask on first, get your vote in. And that allows you then to work with your friends, your peers, and make sure that they know how to vote safely and that they get to the polls as well. And what a powerful feeling, not only to vote yourself, but if you could get 10 of your friends to go vote, and everyone got 10 more of their friends to vote, we can change this country.
And that's not light, right? No, and that's not light, because there's 12 million more young voters for the very first time eligible to participate than older voters, and 2/3 of them are young people of color. Alexis, you and I have been, working on the voter registration aspect for a long time. Full disclosure, Alexis actually saw my the Voto Latino business plan vision before anybody else did. So that's how long we've been in this fight. What's your advice for somebody coming into this for the very first time and feeling rightfully overwhelmed with voting under a pandemic and under a financial crisis? How do you inspire them to get involved?
Well, look, I know this is the Power Summit, and I think Cecile's words on building power, I think, is the most compelling thing. I think what we have seen over just in the short 6 months is the culmination of a decades-long process of organizing and building power, but also really building at that intersection, right, of people really understanding that for us, it feels like the outside game of building that movement power is as strong as the inside game of getting people into office, and the power of that combination together of what we will be able to transform in terms of policy should be the vision guiding us all, and why it's so important for us all to do our part. I think that, for the individual, it goes back to having a plan, making sure that in advance if you want to make that choice to vote in person or to or to get your absentee ballot and know where you need to drop it off, what the official locations are, and how you're communicating that information. I think it's really important to, also make sure that people are going through organizations like Voto Latino or Planned Parenthood or Supermajority so they can get that trusted information, because there will be a lot of noise. There will be a lot of disinformation. And so making sure that they have a way to verify that information is really important. Planned Parenthood has its Rice Community Organizing Program that we've built partner with. And I think that having those kinds of touch points inside that can make sure that we are getting people the right information that they need. But there is no choice. I think we also have to be clear, there's no choice. We do need people to go out. We do need people to vote together, so that they don't, to the extent so they don't feel as though they are isolated or vulnerable in moments when there will be active voter suppression, and that they have a plan and that they stick to it, and that we do the thing this November.
Yeah, well, and this, I have a plan. It sounds a bit silly, but look, guys, our democracy, you need to have a date with democracy. And just like you have a date with either whether you're Zooming or you're doing a distancing barbecue, you guys plan and you actually put it on your calendar. Our democracy deserves that date, that you do the exact same thing. Making a plan is super important. I want to thank you, ladies. Before we close out, I think that we have been in this, in the trenches now for so long together, and you both are so highly visible and are leading organizations that are constantly also under attack. Oftentimes we never take a space to recognize the need for self-care. And I want to ask you, because I think that it'll alleviate the burden of some of the young people that are watching right now, to recognize that you too also live under pressure. How do you weather that constant pressure, and how do you do self-care?
Go, Alexis.
Cecile, can I be honest? I knew you were going to punt to Alexis first.
Look, I think that many Americans, just feeling the stress of sheltering in place, of Zoom schooling. I had to relearn 5th grade math. None of this has been easy. And I've been fortunate to be able to do it where my job is, my salary is still guaranteed. I'm still able to, to work from home in a way where, and my health, I have health insurance, and I feel, good about my ability to navigate that for my family. And so, I don't take that for granted. I think even having that in itself is peace of mind. But I definitely, taking those moments of turning things off, of having, a no meeting Friday, or a way in which we can, although I guess today's Friday.
Maybe. Thank you for joining us, our No Meeting Fridays. You just broke your own rule.
But I think finding those small moments, I've been actually reading a lot of fiction, a lot of Netflix, just to take my brain in places when I can't actually get my body out to do other things. But it's critically important, and it's actually good for the movement. And we have to remember that self-care is not just about being selfish. It's actually restoring yourself so that you can do the work to move forward.
And do you recommend?
Well, I've been reading a lot of dystopian fiction by James Butler.
Why am I not shocked, Alexis? Of course you are.
Find some clues.
Reading between the lines. Cecile, what's your recommendation for self-care?
Well, I do think, and I'm trying to learn a lot from my sisters here, because I probably haven't always been the best on this, but we just did a Supermajority just did a big weekend called Supercharge, which was combined learning things about voting, how to vote safely, talking about issues, but also yoga and makeup tutorials and things that just sometimes you just need to do with your friends, with other women, realizing that we have to support each other and sort of take joy and find humor at a moment when oftentimes there doesn't seem much to laugh about. But I do think I'm with Alexis and Maria Teresa. You bring joy to this movement every day. I feel like you are a constant sort of uplifting to all the rest of it. I think just finding joy in the camaraderie with other folks, and realizing that to me, women are the most powerful force in this country. And when we kind of join together, support each other, take joy in the success of each other, there's just nothing we cannot do. So to me, that's restorative.
Well, that was super generous, and I want to thank you for spending your time with us today. I know that your words are wanted and needed in our audience because the slog is hard. But I keep telling people that we are 32 days until dawn, and that dawn comes if we all participate. Alexis, thank you for taking your Friday free meetings with us today. And Steele, always a champion of women's rights, but always speaking truth and making sure that you are making good trouble. I stand next to you in anything that you need, and so does Voto Latino. We are taking this charge together, but we are taking our country back. And I'm so grateful for the advocacy that you do, the inspiration that you do, and more importantly, ladies, the fact that you provide people with real tools so that they can be agents of change for themselves. Everyone listen, read. I do encourage you all to read, do Netflix, maybe not dystopian novels, don't do that. We all need a break. But I do have this wonderful woman who does she does yoga via Zoom right before the pandemic broke out. She was basically wringing her hands. She's like, I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't give. I said, well, you're great at yoga. Why don't you give that? And she started organizing young women and providing activists with Zoom yoga. And she's hard and tough, and you feel alive and in your body. But what is really exciting about her is that she put on her cape. She leaned into what her skill was, what her superpower was. And she was just recently named the 3rd best yoga instructor in all of DC, all via Zoom. Wow. So it's very exciting. Natalie Clark, check her out. She will put you guys to work, but in the most best of ways. But that's when people ask, like, what can we do? What's your superpower? We need you all. And thank you for joining us today.
Love you, women.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for
Gracias, guerreras, in the fight.
Oh, that was so wonderful. I'm so proud to be wearing my Superwoman, Superhero, Superstar, Superpower, Super Majority shirt. They made t-shirts and suits with Argent to celebrate our ambition because it suits us. Mujeres, we got this. Team, we've got this. There were so many gems in that. I hope you're still with us, because if you are, we've got a great message coming to you right now from Joe Biden, VP candidate for the Democratic Party himself.
Hello, Voto Latino. Thanks for the chance to speak with you, and thanks to Maria and her leadership and all the all-important work she's doing. And, more than ever, the power is in your hands. I want to thank each one of you for your commitment and courage, for all the late nights and hard conversations, for giving people hope and power, getting them out to vote. Latinos are the core of the American story, a fifth of our population, an essential voice in every major election, an economic powerhouse. You're responsible for $2.6 trillion, or GDP, and growing. If the Latino community was its own country, it'd be the 8th largest economy in the world. That means if we invest in Latinos, we're making one of the smartest possible investments with the greatest possible returns for our nation for a long, long time to come. It's just that simple. But today we're facing multiple crises: pandemic, recession, deep racial injustice, climate change. And it happens far too often. Latinos are being some of the most hardest hit by all those burdens, dying at a rate from COVID, a higher rate, disproportionately knocked out of jobs, risking their lives on the front lines. Latino small businesses left without help go broke, and young people have had an especially tough run. Whether it's you missed your high school prom or graduation, or you weren't sure if you're going back to college campus this fall, or saw your hours at work cut back, or lost your job. So many of you and young Latinos like you all across this country have experienced the effects of COVID firsthand. But I refuse to let this moment deny you the bright futures you've been working so hard for. Because in these crises, we have an enormous opportunity to build back better, working in partnership with all of you. I promise you, as president, on day one, I'm going to implement a national strategy I've laid out since March to beat COVID and to get people back their lives, to expand access to quality health care, to make public college free for most families, and give Latino workers the rights, pay, and protections they deserve. Long overdue. I'm going to protect dreamers and their families. I'm going to restore our promise as a nation of immigrants. I'm going to create millions of good-paying jobs for the future and get everyone a fair shot to get ahead. But to do that, we need everyone to vote. Donald Trump is doing all he can to scare and discourage people because deep down he knows he's no match for your power. You know, you all are going to determine our future. You can't stop us. He can't stop us. If every last one of us votes, he can't possibly stop us. So thank you all for what you do and what you've been doing. So let's get to work. God bless you all. Thank you for all you're doing for the country, you've done for the country, and you are the future of the country.
I can't hear you. Got to work your mic. Alberto, ¿qué? There you go. Hey, we did it.
Hey, ¿qué pasó? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Cómo estamos? Oye, Rosario, just before we finalize today's awesome event, why don't you go ahead and just give some quick remarks and take it away.
Yes. I mean, I think today was really powerful, and I'm so grateful for everyone who was able to join us for our first virtual Power Summit. We've been doing this for years, and it's been incredible, the community that we've built up. And I'm so grateful that we didn't have to forfeit doing it this year. I just want to say a big, huge thank you to the entire team that made this happen, and correcting things and working things on the fly as they were coming up. We will only continue to get better at this. But I just want to say, to really emphasize, we need all hands on deck. And there are so many different people out there who are understandably really overwhelmed with everything from this COVID crisis to the economic crisis that is brought on, and the devastation of people losing family members, people who are sick right now, and just the confusion about the next steps going forward. And I love what a lot of the last panel spoke about, which is about, this work is really, really hard, always has been, always will be, well, hopefully not always will be, but I can't look at any point in history where, I haven't seen an ancestor who really struggled to make things better for us today. And, the most important thing is to try to do it with as much joy and light and love and health as possible. So really, we've been emphasizing it a lot today, but very seriously, please, drink that water, take that breath, have a moment, even if you only have 5 minutes to give yourself a check-in with yourself and just sit with yourself, please do so. We need you. We need you fully, presently, richly, in all of your glory, each and every one of you. And know that you are loved, and that we are so grateful to have you be a part of this community and our family. We are working together, even if we can't totally see each other, even if we're distanced from each other. We all have each other on our hearts and our minds, and that's why we're doing this work with such urgency and so fervently, because it's for love. It's for taking care of each other and making our tomorrows that much better and brighter and easier than they are today. So just big thank you to everybody. Please be that model voter. If this is your first time voting, if this is your second, third, if this is your first time registering other people, just make it that part of your identity. Make a date for your vote. Bring friends along, bring style along, or show up in your sweatpants, however it is that you want to do it. But really, let's celebrate our right to vote. It is the 100-year anniversary of the suffrage movement passing the 19th Amendment, of women having the right to vote legally, recognized in our Constitution. Though again, the Haudenosaunee had been doing it for years after, and there were a lot of women, especially who look like me and others, who are not able to exercise that vote, and we can now. So let us seize that power, let us grow that power, and let's make our voices heard. Thank you so much. 16 years of Voto Latino. years now that we've had our own holiday that we helped to co-found, National Voter Registration Day. Now we're starting a new one on Vote Early Day. This year, organizations have come together for that, which is so powerful. And, you know, we'll see you at the polls. And I know we have a message now from Maria Teresa Kumar. And I just want to say again, I'm so glad to have been able to be with you. I wish I could see you all, but I love you. I'm grateful for you. I am one vote, but together we are many. Gracias por todo. We got this.
Mil gracias to each of you for joining us today on the Power Summit. I want to send a double mil gracias to Senator Sanders, La Mujerista, Julian Castro, Rosario Dawson, GLAAD, Planned Parenthood, Disinformation Defense League, Daphne Frias, Nubia Williams, Maribeth, Alejandra Cruz, Cecile Richards, and Alexis McGill-Johnson. You are all my guerreras in crime, and so appreciative of all the knowledge that you dropped on each of us today, for taking the time to make sure that we are empowered, that we are informed. Now I recognize that this isn't the way we typically do the Power Summit, but I also recognize that the best defense for the November election is to have all the information and all the knowledge that we need for ourselves and for our families. We are en la lucha right now, every single one of us. I also know that right now, many of you could already vote. Please start voting early. Please ask for your mail-in ballots. Make a plan to vote. Just like you made a date with us today, make a date with our democracy. And the deadline for voting is November 3rd. Don't wait for the last minute. Vote early, and tell your tías y tus primos to vote early with you. We must recognize right now that we have to continue pursuing our democracy, and our democracy is just as strong as we are when we participate. Nos toca mostrarle un poquito de amor. We have to show it love, because when we show it love, it blossoms. Don't forget, when we all came out to vote in the 2018 election, it was the largest participation in American history in a midterm in 100 years. And we transformed what Congress looks like. It was the most Latinas, the most members of Congress that were women, that were women, that were veterans, all the way down the line. Let's not forget, we have 31 days until dawn. Continue to participate, continue to register, continue to vote, and tell your friends to come along. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending that special time with me, but also a special shout out to my staff at Voto Latino. This would not have been possible. Ever since the pandemic, they have not stopped. As you know, as of today, we've registered over 407,000 voters. We've contacted close to 1 million low propensity voters, organized volunteers, thousands of them, like people like you. And that was because we have the best team in the business. I have to tell you that I want to send a special shout out to Germán Partido, who helped organize the Power Summit. He really stepped up. Norberto Briceño, who is right now managing a lot of the back-end technology and who is the one that talks to you all the time across our social. A special shout out to Brianna Carmen and the work that her team does with Dulce and Camila. They are the ones that actively are, when you text volunteer to 73179, they're the ones that are making it happen. I want to send a special shout out as well to Amir, Patel, who is making sure that people are registered and informed, Danny Turkel, who is making sure that everybody is plugged in and talking about our messaging, and Danny Friedman, our managing director, and every single one of you who are making sure that we are on fire, that we are meeting the moment, because we couldn't do it alone. Voto Latino depends on every single one of you to do your part. What we can do is provide you with the information, but we need your fierceness now in November. We know that there's a lot of things on our plate, but this is what's going to help us make sure that we write the course for our country. And como siempre, it depends on us. Estamos en la lucha juntos. I want to send a special shout out also to our sponsors, to Bank of America, to Southwest Airlines, to SEIU, to Walmart. Again, the reason that we're able to have these frank conversations is from individuals, including Microsoft and so forth. So thank you so much for your continued support to each of one of our sponsors. And I also want to thank Vice President Joe Biden for that very special message that he sent to Voto Latino today. It's important that we participate. It's important that we vote. So thank you for taking the time. Estamos en la lucha. Remember to educate, engage, and empower every single one of you and the family around you. It is our community that has an opportunity to decide this election. And that's not hyperbole. For the first time, as you know, we will be the second largest eligible group of voters. First time. Let's make history together. Estamos en la lucha. Juntos podemos.